Happy Friday. Murkvast Menagerie. Let's take a look. Thanks to all my patrons, Librarian, The Noise in the Hall, and the other one. There's always three, and I said three, so thank Baron of Dice, I guess. Okay, so if you're watching this video, it's because you're interested in playing some goofy monster Cruel Boys. Murkvast Menagerie, just right off the rip, Murkvast Menagerie is not going to be a super competitive army, like a super competitive playstyle and a super competitive list. But what it is going to do, it is interesting. It is very much like a tar pity kind of style. Like, you're not going to have like a lot of damage, but you're going to be kind of sneaky and grindy and tar pity. But more importantly, what you're going to do is you're going to play all of your favorite monsters in Cruel Boys. Like, if you're playing Murkvast Menagerie, it's because you've said to yourself, I want to play a list with a Vulture, another Vulture, and two Break Bosses, and I want to put them on the table and throw them at the board and have a really fun time. Or if you're playing a super casual game, like if I was playing against somebody that was brand new to the game or was trying out something brand new, like I could see myself being like, you know what, like I do want to play a Break Boss. I do want to put that model on the table, but it's certainly in not to be taken seriously as a super competitive army or anything, right? So if that's you, then and you're watching, welcome. Let's have a look at how to make this army fun, how to understand it. And at the very end, we're going to talk to Will, who is a player that I've been looking to talk to for a long time. He's an American that lives on the West Coast, I think Washington, but we'll ask him later. And he plays with the Saga of Dice folks down in Vancouver. So I've met him in person as well, and he's a very good player. So I'm interested to see. He's an orc player as well. So he won I think it was 5-0 to GT recently, but I can't remember. I will ask him, of course, but I know that he's a good player, and I'm excited to talk to him here in a bit. But we're going to go through everything to do with this army first, so let's do that. So, Murkvast Menagerie. Scumdrek must be included and must be your general. This is, of course, an army of renown, so we're limited in our options. We can take the Snatch Boss, Vulture Boss, Break Boss, and Marsh Crawler. We can take those units freely. So a lot of lists that I've seen have lots of drops because we're taking Break Bosses, Vulture Bosses, Snatch Bosses, and we take Scumdrek. I've seen lots of that around because this is like a monster-themed army. For every monster that you include, you can also include a Shaman and a non-hero infantry unit, which are Gut Rippers, Hobgrots, Monster Killers, and Bolt Boys. In the rules, at least to my reading and understanding of this army, you can, if you include one monster, you can include one Shaman and one infantry unit. If they're not tied one-to-one, the Shamans you can throw in addition. No regiments of renown, no faction terrain, and no Gorka Morka manifestations. The manifestations of Gorka Morka. Except for Foot of Gork. That's the one that comes with this army. So you can take the Foot of Gork, or you can take any generics. You can take Primal, you can take Malevolent Maelstrom, or whatever that's what it's called. But you understand, or Kronspine for as well. We're still a Cruel Boys army, so we still get that +1 to cast on the Shaman, so Kronspine is definitely viable. It's my go-to favorite just because I have a model that I love. Okay, let's keep going. So battle traits. So we have 3 here. Crawly Swarm is a passive. -1 to hit for combat attacks, which is melee attacks, that target friendly units wholly within 12 inches of a friendly monster that has not charged this turn. So this is a significantly, obviously way more reliable. There's no roll here. -1 to hit. This will stack with the Gut Rippers -1 to hit if your opponent has any bonuses to hit. So it essentially, if you have both, if you have 2 -1 to hit debuffs on an enemy unit, your opponent is not all out attacking them. They're because it's wasted. But that's about it, unless a unit has some other +1 to hit, like priority target or prized beast or something like that, right? So stacking them can matter for sure. +1 to hits are kind of like they're relatively common in the game, right? So, but those monsters can't have charged. So you can see already how we're stacking up like debuffs in Cruel Boys here, and we're incentivized to receive and not to charge. Second battle trait, Propa Grizzly. This one is you can basically ignore. Sorry, that's a different one I'm thinking. So this is in the combat phase once per turn army. Monster in combat can use that has not used a rampage, so it's only one rampage per turn. Pick an enemy unit in combat with it and roll a dice equal to your monster's health. So that's going to be like 12, 14 dice, and 6-ups are mortals. So on average, we're going to be doing like 2 mortals. This is very similar to like a 2-up D3, but if you could deal 1 mortal on the like it's like D3 mortals is how it's going to play out, roughly D3 mortals. On the Break-A-Boss, it's going to be a little bit worse, and I think on Scumdrek, hold on, let me pull up my stats here, just so that I know it. I have some reference stuff here. I think Scumdrek is 14, just off the top of my head. Let's see if I'm right. I love it when I take a guess and I'm right. No, Scumdrek is 15, and the Snatcher Boss is 14. So that's pretty cool. Gobsprak is 14, the Break-A-Boss is 12, so the Break-A-Boss is averaging 2, and then all the other monsters are averaging more than that. So it's actually, yeah, like maybe 2 or 3 mortal wounds, but it is once per turn army. So it's not like all of your monsters get to do this. If they could, it would be quite a bit better, but still not incredibly powerful. But so this is like fine, whatever. A few extra mortal wounds here and there, no big deal. The third one is After It Lads. This is in your movement, once per turn army. Pick a friendly monster that was not set up this turn. It can move 3 inches and into combat. Sort of like a little bit weaker, but because it happens in the movement phase, but little mighty destroyers. That's pretty cool. And it's only in your movement phase, so it's not in like the movement phase. So that's pretty cool. If it started in combat, it must end in combat, but it doesn't have to end with the same target. So you can change targets, unlike piling in, where you can't actually change targets. You have to stick with one target. You're sort of leashed to all the units that you're in combat with. This one, you're not. You can move out of combat, which makes for some interesting pile-in situations where you can move into combat 3 inches and then pile in 3 inches and get into something interesting. Or even if you're in combat, you can sort of leave and swap units with one of your monsters. Because it's only the monsters, right? So I always think about the Break-A-Boss, because the Break-A-Boss, I love to break stuff with the Break-A-Boss. Enhancements / spells. So heroic trait, Grim Diet. There's just one. You just get, for all of these, you just get one. There's no choices to make. So we don't need to have a discussion about which ones are better and which ones are worse. This is just what you get. The heroic trait, Grim Diet. It's a passive, and the unit gets a 5-up board. So Vulture Boss, I like it. I think I kind of like it on the Break-A-Boss. Let's see what. That's sort of like I've obviously checked out these rules. Oops, that's a misclick. A whole bunch, but I'm curious to see, because I've always felt that it would be best on the Break-A-Boss. Grim Diet. Kill Boss on Corpse Revolta, I think is another good one. Another good choice, right? Just having that 5-up board making it hard. But on the Break-A-Boss, it's cool because you heal. So healing gets significantly better if you have a ward, right? Because every recovered health has to go also through that 5-up board as well. So it really adds to the longevity of your units. So I kind of like that on the Break-A-Boss. Artifacts of Power, Skin Rigla Larva. In your hero phase, once per battle. So it's already once per battle. Pick an objective. Pick an objective within 6 inches. When an enemy is contesting that objective, they ignore positive modifiers to their control score and suffer -3 control. Yawn. This is the kind of ability where you're going to struggle to remember it. You're going to struggle to remember this. I suggest if you're going to play this army that you get some kind of token that you essentially put on the table during deployment, right? And you're like, well, when I can, this is the one I'm going to pick. And so here's my little bug token in the middle of the battlefield, hopefully. And then maybe if it happens to matter, you can be like, oh, okay, like I do have this, right? Spell lore, Morkish Mist. Pick a friendly visible infantry unit wholly within 12. They get a 5-up board. Throw this on a reinforced unit of Gut-Rippas. Pretty decent. Pretty decent. Not very long range, but good, right? Good. Throw it on Gut-Rippas. Don't throw it on Hoggrots. Hoggrots are terrible. Manifestation. So you can take the Foot of Gork, like I said, and to be honest, it might actually be worth taking. You're not taking a bunch of Shaman. You're also not taking the Swamp Staff. So you're going to be 1 cast in this army, probably. So if you only have 1 cast, it's not about how many manifestations you can cast. It's about which important ones are you casting that matter to your army. So I think there's like I'm thinking Foot of Gork. I'm thinking Cron Spine. I'm thinking Ravenous Jaws. I want to add some damage to this army, or some control with the Foot of Gork. But Cron Spine's an interesting choice for sure. But Foot of Gork is worth considering. It's not like it's a no. It's also super fun, right? Like I said, you're playing this army because it's super fun. So playing the Foot is fun. Go stomp them. So that's what you're gaining. So if we just do a quick review, we have a 5-up ward on one of the monsters. We have a spell that gives a 5-up ward. We have, and then we have this move, right? And then this -1 to hit, right? The -1 to hit, the 5-up ward on a hero, the 5-up ward spell. You can see how we're getting very sort of tanky, right? And then the Gut Rippers have the built-in -1. Swamp Boss, sorry, not Swamp Boss. This Sludge Raker Beast has a -1 to wound effect, right? You can see how we're sort of throwing in a lot of these debuffs. That's kind of the style that this army's going for. And then this move, which is really interesting. That's what we're using with like our hammers or our break, like it's because it has to be a monster. So it can also be any of your monsters, right? So we make our infantry tanky, and then we use our monsters for the damage. Is how I'm feeling, like how I understand this army. And we can be tricky and sneaky with this move. But we're trying to be like tar pity, kill you with our monsters. So what are we losing? What kinds of... Because this is something I feel like people, and myself as well, that I always forget when I'm looking at these armies. We're not comparing it like if it's good or not. We have to always compare it to the base army, and we forget sometimes the things that we're losing. So we don't get the Swamp Staff. We're no longer 2 casts with a single Shaman. We don't get Egomaniac or Slippery Scumbag or Lore of the Swamp. So we don't get Choking Mist. We don't get the manifestations of Gorkamorka. We get no Dirty Tricks. So while we do get wards, we don't get Strike Last. We also don't get any Sneak and no Venom Encrusted Weapons. So our Gut Rippers are going to deal even less damage than they were before. They're going to deal like very, very little damage, and they're not going to be mobile. While we have that 3-inch move, we're not teleporting like Bolt Boys into the backlines. We are much more of a straight-up fighting army compared to standard Cool Boys. There's no Scaregob Totem. It's meaningless because we don't have Dirty Tricks, so without, you wouldn't even want one even if you could, because it doesn't affect the rules, and it's just a liability. Manifestations of Gorkamorka. Not a big loss, given we only likely are getting a single cast. We do, however, get arguably the best one, which is the Foot of Gork, so we're not losing a ton there, especially because we're losing Swamp Staff. And we're also losing list flexibility. We're having to take a lot more monsters than we would normally be taking otherwise, and so being like 2 drops, 3 drops isn't really viable because of the way that our monsters are tied to infantry units, right? Don't forget, we can only take 1 infantry unit for every monster that we take. So if you're taking 2 monsters, you're taking 2 infantry units and maybe a Swamp Call, a Shaman. That's all. So you're going to be like 3, 4, 5 drops. I think that leaning into the drops is probably the way to do it. We're probably going for Prize Beast. Obvious, like probably, right? Is sort of what, because that's what we are. But you get a second one. So I guess maybe Priority Target, or the one that gives you like special assignment, right? The one that gives +1 rend against something. You can throw that on a Vulture boss. Yes, that works, right? It doesn't have to not be leading the regiment. Or no, it can't be leading the regiment. So I don't know what else you do. I don't even know. You can't even do Prize Beast. I don't know what you do. We'll ask Will. Will know. Speaking of, so it was recently...
So what were you saying about TTS though? You were like,
because like usually players that I know that play quite a bit, like TTS is sort of a staple, right?
Yeah, and when COVID hit and everyone started doing TTS, I looked into it and I kind of got interested, and then. And this is the very American part of it, right? Like, literally, like one of my friends who I've played Age of Sigmar with since early second edition. He worked in an oil refinery, like on a rig, and he's like, Will, I don't interact with a single person. Like, my life is to push buttons. Like, he's like, I'm not going to get COVID. I was like, yeah, cool. So, like, we used to play, he and I, another friend that had a similar job. So, like, we would just play at my house because the risk of getting COVID was pretty much zero.
Pretty much zero.
Yeah, I mean, none of the stores were open or anything, but yeah.
So,
and then, yeah.
What were you telling me before about, is it the best player in Canada?
So if you go to Honest Wargamer, Rob over in the UK, he does statistics. He pulls statistics, or whatever he calls statistics, off BCP, and I think some of the other results. And then he'll do national rankings, faction rankings, overall rankings, team rankings. The team rankings are a bit wonky because like Warped Dice shows up as American and as Canadian, and they sit differently. But according to his stats, I'm the #1 Canadian player as of January, which is funny because I'm not Canadian.
Hooray, eh?
Yay, yeah. And it's because all the really good Canadian players just like compete in the US, and so they show up in the US rankings.
It's interesting. I wonder if it's probably not the same for actual like worlds. I bet you they have some different data, different rankings there.
Yeah, everyone has different like how they pull rankings.
And you also did super well with an Iron Jaws list. And so Warp Dice, that's the team that you're on, right? These guys are based out of Vancouver.
Yeah, that's the team based out of the Vancouver, larger than Vancouver metro area.
Yeah, we'll throw some stuff down in the description, maybe some links.
If I could.
Well, let's do it later.
Yeah.
I already hit my record button. We're just jumping right in.
Hit record.
So you played recently in a tournament. You said you went 3-2 with Menagerie.
Yep, 3-2 with Menagerie, and I've played Menagerie now. I started playing it after I watched AOS Coach do his review of the Orc War Clans, and it was painful, right? Like, all of us in all were both Iron Jaws and Crew Boys were like, oh, this is not good.
Yeah.
But he gave this interesting statement about Menagerie of just like how you could play that lets you play really aggressive if you want to. And it plays kind of like the old Iron Jaws where you could just bum rush your entire army across the field if you so wished. And it kind of have durability. It's not as good as Iron Jaws because they're mostly on a 4-up save. But I was like, hey, that's actually kind of an interesting way to play, and then just like ignore the Cruel Boys rules, right? Menagerie is its own army. Don't pretend like I'm missing sneaky, dirty tricks. Those don't exist. If you get the same war scrolls, but everything else is different.
Yeah. So in this video, up to this point is about 20 minutes of me going over all the rules.
Okay.
Right, and so
of Menagerie,
right, and so it's like. Yeah. Hopefully everybody's pretty caught up. Because it's quite different, right? Like, specifically, like, the things that we talked about losing are, like, your sneaks, there's no venom-encrusted weapons, right? Like, the damage output of the army really shifted from, mortal wounds and bolt boys into, like, more monster-heavy focused damage, But I have this...
It is very monster-heavy.
Yes, well, super monster-heavy. So I have this first list that you have here. So what list did you go 3-2 with? So I want to actually hear more about your tournament experience. Is this the list that you played, the one that I have? This is Scumdrek, Killboss on Vulture. It's the 1950 list.
It should be Scumdrek, Killboss on Vulture, 40 Gut Rippers. So two squads. It's not the 1950. It was the exactly 2,000 point list.
Okay, so it's this other list. So now I have that. Okay, so yeah. Awesome. So it was, and the manifestation lore you took was Primal Energy, 5 drops.
Yeah, and that didn't matter. I never got I tried to get Life Swarm off in every game, and I don't think I ever got a single Primal Energy, or if I did, it was immediately destroyed. Yeah. Okay. It's only got one wizard.
One wizard, yeah, one cast.
And so, I'll tell you, one of the reasons I brought this, you're one of the reasons I brought it.
Menagerie?
So,
like...
well, no, No, the double vulture, because you did that brief video which you pulled down when you're like, run double vulture. I had been playing this just locally, with like two of the Mire Brutes, the
The
Breaka
breaker
boss
bosses, yeah.
on the trolls, and you put that video up about vultures, and I was like, you know what? Like vultures become, I don't want to say they're really durable, but they're far more durable in Menagerie. And I
Yeah.
thought, you know what? Like one of the cool things, the thing about Menagerie is that the vulture, if your opponent's model is within 24 inches, so um, straight line, nothing in between you. But if you're within 24 inches, it's in combat with the vulture because you don't need to roll a charge.
Yeah.
You run 6 inches and then just walk into combat. And so I thought, okay, that's great because one vulture will just walk into combat and it'll pin them because then they can't redeploy. And then the other vulture flies up 12 inches and charges. And in every game, that's what I did was pin a unit with the vulture and then charged with the other vulture. And like Menagerie's been really fun to play. You get rampages out the wazoo. So you get to use a rampage on both vultures because one of the thing to think about with Menagerie is you can't double up on a rampage. You can't use the same rampage twice, and no monster can rampage twice, right?
Yeah, the rule of one.
The rule of one. So the vulture charges in, and it does the impact, the vulture dive. And hopefully you rolled like an 11, and you roll 11 dice. But the vulture will get its vulture dive, and then the other vulture usually is going to roll 14 dice and pick up 2 or 3 sixes in the start of combat.
Yeah, that's right.
And then the one that charged can always power through at the end and get itself out of combat. So I was running.
And I'm assuming you put the 5-up ward on one of them.
Correct. I don't know
is it the pinning one? But like just conceptually, is it the pinning one? And then the other one's going to charge and then power through and get out of combat, and one of them's going to stay and have a 5-up ward?
Conceptually it would be cool, but often it just a lot of my opponents ask what my army did, and I explained it to them, and some of them did the math and they're like, oh wow, like I can't get out of range. But you can put a lot of your army out of range. So yeah, I mean, a lot of times you don't have a choice which one's going to have the ward. Like the one that's going to move 24 or 21 inches and pin something is the one that's going to make the longest move, right? So if you have 2 vultures, you want to guarantee you want to get the best chance of the charge with the one that's going to charge. So you don't always get the choice of which one's going to.
But I guess ideally,
combat.
Optimally, yeah.
I think ideally it's the one that didn't charge because it can't power through.
Right.
But like I said, it's really situational.
So here's another question. I just wanted a little bit of clarification on this. Prized Beast, you can't really use it in this army, right? Because Prized Beast has to be... It's too bad, because would be excellent. And it's not even possible. You can't play Kragnos. So there's not even any hero that can take any other monster.
You can't take Kragnos or Gobsprak. Those are your 2 options, right?
Yeah.
And neither... And unfortunately, the Marshcrawler Sloggoth is great in this list, and it's a war machine, which is unique.
At least you can take it, though.
You can take it, and it's great because you're running those blocks of large blocks of Gut Rippers, and the reason you do that is because you can make them a lot of times -2 to hit. There was one game I was -3 to hit because I was in cover within 12 inches of a monster that didn't charge, and then the Gut Rippers use their scare shields. So I know you're never more than -1 to be hit, but you can't. I don't know if there's any way to get a +3 to hit or a +4.
Yeah, well,
so
it dissuades your opponent. You can't really all-out attack.
Yeah,
and if it's Prize Beast or something, if you're fighting a Prize Beast, it's it's still -1.
Right. No, exactly, and the cool thing about Gut Rippers is, as long as it's not a hero, you can scare Varangard for some illogical reason, and they're going to be -2 to hit you suddenly.
Do you think you'd play Primal Energy again? I was sort of making a case for Cronspine. Because when it goes off and when you get it, it's going to be really impactful. And you do still have a +1 caster.
Yeah, and I managed to kill that Hobgrot every game, usually on the first round. But, or not Hobgrot, his little Potgrot. Like, I always rolled a 4. You know, maybe I like Primal Energy with my Iron Jaws. I know you've made the argument to use the Orc spells. At my Iron Jaws, I just play such a stand in the middle and wrestle you down to the, just hold you in place.
Sure.
The Primal Energy just lets me heal. It's a guaranteed healing with the
I just like that they're orcs. To be honest, and like I was playing a game and I had the Gork Rora and I kept using it and I was also activating Places of Power and I just blew up shamans. They just killed themselves and it was awesome. It was fantastic.
And I played this week. I played 2 games and the Gork Roar just lets you get off kill a beat, and extra damage.
Yeah, the Ward Chanter is actually really good with the Ward Chanter. Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think I ever used Primal Energy. The spell for Menagerie. My last game was against Damien, right? He's up from PG with where you are, and I launched 20 Gut Rippers into him, -2 to hit, +1 on their save from the Shaman's Potion, and then a 5-up ward, and that makes them super durable.
So how are you scoring? Do you want to be like what are some good tactics?
So the way I was scoring is you have the mobility. So I guess I should back up. Like I'm one of those odd players, I think, who just outdrops their opponent in every game. I don't know anyone else. Oh, well, that's not true. I know one other person that plays 5 drops reliably, but I just assume you're gonna, my opponent.
I mean, fair, 5
drops.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this list is almost always Menagerie is always going to be high drop because you just need lots of monsters. I deploy so that I can do either take the center or the flanks. The vultures are great for grabbing flanks.
Oh, fantastic.
And yeah, just deploy for that. That's actually in the list that I played. I had 3 Bolt Boys. They grabbed flanks. Their only reason I had them is because monster killers are 10 points higher, and that was exactly 2,000 points.
Yeah, sure. I was gonna make that comment. I was gonna say 10 points saved.
No, 100%. Yeah. Otherwise, they would have been monster killers. So yeah, no, I aim for the flanks. Usually grab the center. In one game, because this army is so fast, and I'm saying that because you can run. You get 11 inches of move on Gut Rippers if they auto run, right? And they can charge. So because the army is so fast, you can actually, plan to even do what's the destruction one called? Time to get stuck in. Yeah, I like the destruction ones. This army is likely not. It's honestly not going to kill things a lot of times. So
yeah.
Well, which is fine for destruction, right? Like if a blob of Gut Rippers pins someone and do a lot of damage, I plan I'm going to do a cunning. Was it a cunning approach where it's a destruction tactic? Have a unit in combat, and have a unit not in combat go in and fight and kill. Easy to do. So grabbing the flanks, taking the center, take their lands was pretty easy because you
got 2 vultures
on a vulture. Yep.
Yeah, and they're 5 control, so you can take it away from foot heroes or
Yeah, and they're pretty decent at killing people's entourage too.
Yes.
Yeah, situational, but.
So what honor guard can you take?
So I double honor guarded in every time, and I'll tell you what I felt was the best. Scumdrek would take bodyguard.
Okay, sure. Tar Pit even more. Okay.
And it's an amazing tar pit because he walks into combat.
Right.
So he can move 8 inches.
And he can be
walk 3.
Yeah.
And then if you wanted to, and I did this, if you auto run your so if you position Scumdreck and the Gut Rippers around him, and you walk him into combat, you can auto run them to the exact position they were in before he moved, and they're still within 6 of him. They didn't go into combat. And he's not a slouch in combat. He's unfortunate that he has to be in the list, but that was one. So bodyguard on that guy, and then your opponent is -1 to hit, -1 on their attacks. Maybe -2 to hit if they walk in. Well, if they countercharge the Gut Rippers for some reason, and then it depended. In one game, I took priority target on the Gut Rippers, but usually I would just give the Gut Rippers, the +1 rend. I forget what that one's called. The +1 rend
assignment.
against special assignment.
Probably against infantry, right?
Well, it depends. Like in one game,
sure.
which I didn't win, but they had a bunch of cavalry, and you're like, I'm going to be anti-cavalry. Yeah, I mean that's just situational. I think those are the two.
Because Field Sergeant wouldn't be super good in this list, but Prize Beast would be very good in this list.
Yeah, Field Sergeant is.
There's not enough infantry in this list, right? Like.
There's 40 infantry though.
I mean,
right?
I guess.
But
sure, that's fair.
Charge, so
that's fair.
They can run in charge. As long as that marsh crawl is there, you're going to run in charge. So they don't really need it.
I wish you could save 10 points somewhere in this list, and so those Bolt Boys could be monster killers.
Yeah, I did too.
It hurts my feet. Like, I just love monster killers. I always include at least one in every... Because when you have an opponent that has a good monster, and you're like, oh, I'm within 6 of you, and you don't get to do your cool rampage... It feels really good. And when you strike last of someone's big fancy monster, and when you do both for 120 points, it feels really good.
This list, I was flip-flopping on it until right before submission, and my thought was, do I want to take one large block of Gut Rippers and 2 blocks of monster killers, because I can do that.
Sure.
Or do I want to take 2 big blocks of Gut Rippers? And I was flip-flopping in between. And then you would lose the Bolt Boys doing that, because the limitation of not counting the Shaman, it's 1 infantry per monster.
Was that your other list? You're flip-flopping between the 1950 list?
That wasn't exactly the other list, but I tried that other... So this other list, the 1950 list, I picked up a Snatch of Us on Sludge Ranger Beast, and that actually is a pretty good addition, because he can tag the Vulture. And so at the beginning of the game, he just gives venom to a Vulture, right? And then and then that thing launches across the table. And as long as the Vulture doesn't die, and it's remarkably so much more resilient in Menagerie than it is in
of course.
Cruel Boys.
Well, the -1 to hit and a 5-up ward on one of them.
Yeah, so you can tag a bunch of stuff and then potentially power through, or just retreat back. Not even necessarily retreat, but just move back onto your side of the table after it did something, and rally and stuff like that. So
this rule of move 3 inches in the move phase, even if it's just for monsters, would have been such a good rule for Cruel Boys. It would have been this weird mirror to Iron Jaws, where they have Mighty Destroyers, and we have this other like more slippery one, less like plowing into you with our iron, and more like slipping away right into the fog. Missed book or missed opportunity next book.
Yeah, and I think I've had a conversation with a lot of people who play armies like this and Khorne and such. I mean, outside of Bellacor's super annoying rule of you don't do anything, Dark Master.
Yeah.
I think that Murderlust, the After It Laps, which is the Menagerie, and Mighty Destroyers, is one of the most powerful rules in the game.
It's a lot of fun too.
And that's why I like this army. It actually, it's part of what makes it fun, is you can do this thing that they can't run away from you. It's good that it's only I mean, it would be better if it was in both players' turns, but for us, but I mean, it's only in your turn when you move. But it's just an amazing ability. It guarantees getting in combat.
It's awesome.
It's
it's I think easily the best rule in this army in Menagerie. is that movement. I think it's hands down
Yeah.
the strongest and the most fun and the most interesting rule by far. Everything else is like, okay, some minus to hit, some wards, like whatever, it's fine, right? But this one's cool.
This one's cool. The minus to hit is by far the most annoying rule, and it's what keeps it's what keeps your army alive. Cruel boys die pretty easy. You know, I mean, the best you're going to get is a 3-up save on a vulture with all-out defense. And -1 to hit, like, no army wants to hit on whatever it's not designed to hit on. You know, destruction armies, you just go, well, you're hitting on 5s now. So that's. I mean, I think those two rules are what make the army play pretty effectively. The mortal wound output on monsters is okay. Like it's dependable.
It's
You're
not
almost
sure.
always going to get it.
It's like it's a drip.
And
because it's like you're nurgling almost. It's like you're playing really defensively, and then you're like, oh, I'm gonna deal like some mortal damage to you with my gut rippers and my monster killers and my bolt boys, and I'm just gonna grind you out and try to like outstay you. It's like it can be, I think, a 3-2 army. I think that if you're like, I think it might really struggle to go 4-1. But I think it can definitely be a 3-2 army if you're sneaky with it, right? You got to play it well.
Or if you're just really aggressive, it does allow you to, like, because of the -1 to hit bubble, it allows you to, if you wanted, kind of shove your entire army into your opponent on round 1, if you like, which is what old Iron Jaws used to do.
Do you like to go first?
If they let you go first, which is what one of my opponents did, he's like, well, I'm going to let you go first. And I thought, well, your Vanguard are going to kill me, so I should just kill you.
Yeah, don't let them charge you, right?
But if I get charged, I'm -1 to be hit, so we're -2. You know, it's got more durability than standard Cruel Boys. Like, the best they're usually going to do is make you fight last and hopefully do enough damage.
Yeah, I wonder how a 5-0 board sort of compares to Strike Last. You know, because Strike Last is good, but since the Gut Rippers since the Sludge Raker buff was changed, right? It's like we don't deal enough damage to not always die on the clapback. We just we just always die. Even with the -1 to hit from the Gut Rippers, we're just so fragile.
Yeah, but these could be -2, which is a guarantee.
Yeah, so it's almost like
guaranteed -1.
Yeah, it's almost like even like this is more survivable and tanky than standard Cruel Boys, even with the losing Strike Last.
Yeah, and that's how I felt. Like it's just a more durable Cruel Boys. And honestly, because of the shenanigans of movement and the fact that you're durable and that every monster can do something often better than its innate rampage,
sure,
they're actually really fun. Like Swamp Boss Scumdreck, he'll absolutely murder a monster in combat that's wounded with him if he somehow survives to that point. But in this list, he's got 14 dice to roll. Or sorry, 15. He's a 15 monster. Like, that's just a better rampage. I roll 15 dice. I'm probably going to get several 6s.
And you hope for a spike.
5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is the design for destruction anyways. Like, hope for spikes. I think that's how GW thinks. Yeah, so that's been my experience with it. I think it's just been, it's like I play it locally for fun, and it's actually a really fun list. I generally don't enjoy playing Cruel Boys because, like,
well, I was in love with them at the start of third, or sorry, at the start of fourth. At the start of fourth.
Yeah, when they were double teleporting in the movement phase.
Yeah,
like,
I was in love
now,
with them. Yeah,
the current Cruel Boys, like, I don't really like.
It lost its best thing.
Yeah, it lost, and I can understand, like, like if that was a feel bad experience for people to say, like, I'm gonna charge that unit. Haha, no, you're not. Teleport away.
But to that, I always just say, like, but they wrote that rule.
I realize they wrote that rule. They also took it out.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I like, okay, so when I first saw Cruel Boys at the start of fourth, I would say that your opponent is gonna hate playing against you. Like they are, right? You're
Yeah.
making them strike last, and you're moving all over the board, and that's kind of the point of Cruel Boys. You're supposed to hate playing them, kind of.
Yeah.
It's part of like how they play,
But they
and
were
that's
never durable.
no, and they're never durable. It's more just like teleporting after your opponent has moved in the movement phase is very strong. Right? It is a very strong ability, and I totally get the argument of that. It's because it is, right? But I don't know. They just hit it too hard.
You know, we were talking about like most powerful abilities in the game.
Yeah,
That's probably one of them.
it very well could have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, it's gone now, so I just like pretend like rules don't exist that don't exist anymore. Yeah.
How about
if they decide
how about
give it back, they do.
how about
But,
your movement phase?
like I said, I'll just pretend like these things don't exist because they don't exist anymore. But we talked about this like
Right.
not on this. Yeah, I agree. I think if you teleported in your movement phase, that'd be cool. That'd be great. I think that's not a bad rule. Yeah, I think one of the big faults with the Cruel Boys currently is that Venom encrusted weapons and the teleport are both in the hero phase.
Yeah, that's a big one. They step on each other's toes. Yeah.
Yeah, and like if the rules for Lightfinger said you can do if they were worded so that you could Venom encrust and teleport, a second teleport,
Hold on one sec.
that would be okay.
One sec. Hold on.
Okay.
I noticed that you didn't have any Hobgrots, because I mean, obviously, when you look at this army, like in the rules, the first thought is, well, because that's the thing I also enjoyed about your other list, that like the double Sludge Raker, right, the Scumdrak and the Snatch Boss,
Yeah.
is that even then you're still running like only Gut Rippers. Right, like so you didn't like I mean, obviously Hobgrots are bad, but even in this, are they worth taking or like considering or? Oops.
Am I there?
No, you're here. No, I'm just
okay.
Clicking around too much.
The problem with Hobgrots, they need Scumdrak near them. They have a worse save than Gut Rippers. They don't like. What rule do they innately have?
Lots
like,
of
Gut Rippers,
damage for how many points they are if they can deal crit mortals.
If they can deal crit mortals, which means they have to have Scumdrak near them.
Yes.
And then like, are you going to take a reinforced blob of them?
Yes.
Yeah. So then
180 points, right?
Yeah, but I probably couldn't use bodyguard on them at that point. My problem with Hobgrots is they die so easily, and I know that's a lot of wounds, but they don't have a ward.
It's not a lot of wounds, right? Like a reinforced unit is as many wounds as Gut Rippers, right?
As an unreinforced unit of Gut. Yeah, it's the same as Gut Rippers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and they don't have a good save. They don't have scare shields. They don't innately get the mortal wound output. So yeah, I just struggled to want to put them in here. I mean, I own enough Hobgrots too. I have several Dominion boxes worth of Hobgrots.
Because, I mean, like, I can totally understand why you wouldn't want to take Hobgrots, because, like, they're actually, like, any shooting. Like, if I knew that I was going into no shooting and, like, very little range, like, 2-up D3 mortal wound chip damage, I could see, if I knew that wasn't what I was going to play into. Like, if my opponent was, like, playing Gargants or something, like, like, something I know that it's not going to be like that.
Oh, yeah. Hobgrots would be hilarious.
Yes, Hobgrots would be hilarious against Gargants. That is funny.
Yeah.
I always felt like Gargants needed something like that, like a Noblar, right? Like a little nothing of a thing running around.
To run around, yeah. So, yeah. So no, I just couldn't make myself bring Hobgrots. And you mentioned shooting, so that was like the two biggest weaknesses to this was shooting, because you don't suffer a penalty in shooting. You just get shot.
Right, you just get shot like normal, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and that, like, my first opponent at the GT was Jeremy Lemoyne, and he had Stormcast shooting, so he had long strikes, and and it was interesting. So I didn't win that game, but like we fought it out to the end, and I was talking to him afterwards, and we were just discussing. It's like, yeah, the solution is launch the vultures into the long strikes. Just chuck them across the board, walk one of them in, and start eating them. Because even though they can retreat and shoot, like they don't want to be 5 inches away from the vulture when it doesn't die.
Impact Mortals alone would be pretty good, right?
Yeah, if you can do it. Like he did measure to make sure he wasn't within 24 inches of me. But then his long strikes were on the opposite side of the board, so he, it did limit what they could do.
Sure.
But yeah, so shooting's a big weakness, and then magic is the other one. Like I went up against Croak. Ugh. Like that D3 mortal damage spell again and again and again. And I only have one wizard. I actually considered, and I've played some games just for fun with no Swamp Kala Shaman. And those are the lists where I actually I didn't give you any, but I did some like just mass Bolt Boy lists with the Menagerie, because the Bolt Boys are protected with the bubble and they just stand behind the monsters.
Sure.
And then there's no Shaman. I just ran it with no Shaman, just want like 5 monsters. And almost every mission has places of power, and you can activate a place of power with as many heroes or within 3 inches of it. So you could probably put 2 monsters. I know you can. You can put 2 monsters near a place of power, and then you get 2 denies, or banishing in your turn.
Sure.
But no magic.
Yeah.
I also play KO, so I used to play KO a lot, and so I practiced that of I have no wizard, so I will stand next to this building.
Sure. There's ways to work around it. I like that about places of power. Everybody in this manifestation meta is playing lots of wizards, right? But I mean, I like that.
Yeah.
Like in Iron Jaws right now, I'm digging 2 shamans. I like 4 casts. It's a lot of magic. Like you
Iron
always
Jaws
get something.
Wizard. Yeah, not only do you get something, but you have so many casts that your opponent doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Like in this list, I only have 1 wizard in either list. And so as long as you have a wizard, you know you're going to try to deny my spell. But if I've got Iron Jaws and I've got 2 casts per wizard, you might not legitimately know. Like, you might not have enough dispel, so you don't know what my 4th spell is.
Well, especially with the Gork Rora. Like once...
Oh, yeah, the Gork Rora makes it even harder. Yeah.
Well, it's ridiculous. Like, you can have 1 shaman standing at a place of power and 1 shaman with the Gork Rora. And you can have, like, +2 to cast and +3 to cast.
Right.
Like, you're getting your manifestations off. Like, that's with 2 Swamp Kalas, right? In Iron Jaws, it's a little bit less than that, right? +1 and +2, but... Still, +1 and +2 on manifestations that are on 5s, right? Like,
yeah, but they're going to be the Foot of Gork, the Gork Rora, and a Swamp.
Yeah, the Marsh Pit, yeah. Or the Marsh. Mork Spit Marsh.
Yeah, so the Mork Spit Marsh, I actually haven't cast it. I'm just afraid it's going to help someone charge and fight twice.
I just put them in such a position where they can't fit their bases over it. So it's like either the whole unit has to go over the marsh, or right, because I'm just on the other side of it, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it's like you can't, even if you charge, you can't fit your, because it's a really big manifestation. Like it's quite large, so people can't get their whole units over it, and so it just stops them.
It does, but so as an Iron Jaws player, I love it when people cast spells at me that don't move. Because you asked what a battle tactic I choose. I love when you cast shackles at me, because my next battle tactic is fight twice and no one dies, because I'm going to charge that shackles.
Sure, but at least it's like fair point. And when I did that to somebody, they said that to me too. Right? They said you're essentially giving me a free tactic, and I thought sure, but at least it's a tool in my toolbox. Sometimes it might be better to give you an easy tactic if it means stopping your Varen guard from coming in, like delaying them for 2 turns or something. Like sometimes that'll be worth, right?
100%. It's also, I love to remind people of this. Like, this is a great head game, is be like, if you cast that immobile spell, you guarantee me a battle tactic, because I can charge it from 0 inches away with 2 units, and I can kill it with the first, because a pile-in is a fight action, and thus I fought twice. Like, And sometimes people go, oh, yeah, maybe I don't want to do that. And I'm also internally thinking, please don't give my Iron Jaws a movement 1 with your shackles.
Yeah, exactly. It
So,
depends,
because
right?
that happens a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you can kind of control it and do your best.
So yeah, so you know, in this list though, like with just one wizard with the menagerie, manifestations are just like they're you know.
It's
cool.
not.
It works,
that's not what this army is, right?
Yeah, no. The menagerie really has been fighting stuff and being able to really reduce the slap back because of the -1 to hit.
Are you using like what commands are you using a lot of? Like all out defense?
All out defense, sure. All out defense, power. Those always keeping points up for power through because
it's strong.
Because I don't necessarily want my monster in combat. Though it is worth noting that you can. I played Dan at one point in his Death Army. You can retreat with a monster in Menagerie and then walk into the next combat.
Yes, you can change who you're in combat with. Yeah.
Yeah, because like Iron Jaws, you can only Mighty Destroy into another unit. You've got to end in combat with the Mighty Destroy, but then you can retreat and then walk in. Anyways, so power through. I mean, yeah, all out defense, probably all out attack. The generic ones. I'm trying to think. I mean, I rally. I'm trying to keep the monsters alive, so there's a fair number of rallies.
Yeah, that's fair, especially with like wards, right? Like any defensive buffs make gaining health stronger.
Yeah.
So lots of defensive.
Yeah. I'm probably in at least a game or two. I had to reroll charges because I like the Vulture. Vulture number 1 could easily tag something. Vulture number 2 had to make an 8-inch charge, and you couldn't do that always. The other one, and I think this was more of a threat. Like I know I did it once in a game. I don't know if it was even at the tournament, but the fact that Gut Rip is in the lists because of the Marsh Crawler, they can run and charge. So you can threaten people with, I've got 20 guys who can redeploy and charge.
Which is a lot.
Which is a lot, and like no one wants to get hit with that. It's 20 boys who can redeploy and charge, and they're probably -1 to be hit, and they put out like they're gonna do mortal wounds.
They're gonna do mortal wounds. Well, the thing with mortal wounds is that it's almost like it doesn't matter what your guy is. Like they could be the tankiest thing, whatever. They're gonna take some damage.
Right, and that's. I mean, I felt like that's that's part of what made me enjoy playing Menagerie is that it does mortal wounds. Like it actually ignores multiple parts of the game. It ignores the I charge you part of the game. It ignores the I have to roll to wound you part of the game. Which always like is a way to win in Warhammer, right? Just avoid doing something. Kind of like dirty tricks. I don't have to roll if I have a tower for the first one.
Yeah.
It's automatic. Yeah.
It's strong.
So, yeah, but like you said, I don't think these are strong, like, gonna go 5-0. I'm pretty sure if you went to a really large event like LVO, you could go 4, you could win 4.
Maybe lose your first one, go from there.
Well, no, like, if you go to, like, your local GT and there's 30 or 60 players, the first round is random. So like Northern Wastes, you're not a big GT, right? So your first round is random. Your second round is you're actually going to go up against someone who won the first round. But if you go to LVO or some of the like very large events, you're actually likely to win multiple rounds because you're pairing up. You're still not pairing. The probability that you go against someone who won their first round against someone who would never have won their first round, like, is much more likely. I mean, you'll see some odd wins in the large events where you go, wow, how did they go that way? And then you look at their pairings and you go, wow, they got paired against the craziest things.
Right.
Yeah.
Just a lot more going on.
A lot more going on. And so, like, yeah, if you take a list like this, you're likely to just go up against people who go, what?
Yeah.
I didn't know that my army can't do anything when it's -1 to hit, and that you walk into combat. And I look at them and I said, but I told you that like 3 times when you set up.
I swear it doesn't matter. You can tell people your rules till you're blue in the face. They have to play against it once. They have to.
Right.
When I play people, if I don't know their armies, I say don't even. Like, I have like a list of questions that I ask about like moving and shooting and deep strikes and how many casts are you and so on, right? But beyond that, it's like
teleport.
It's like, what's your scariest thing? And they'll be like, oh, Farengard. It's like, okay, right, that's enough. Let's play. That's your scariest, biggest hammer. All right, let's roll dice.
Yeah, and I try to explain my rules in the ways that like are pseudo universal. I don't know if that's really true, but like I just tell people I can murder lust in my movement phase because it seems like everyone knows that Khorne can murder lust. Though this is better because you don't have to spend blood tithe on it. But
you can also change who you're in combat with, which is pretty strong.
Yeah, which is better than Khorne. That like Ironjaws can do that, but Khorne can't. They're just stuck. Yeah.
Well, Ironjaws is leashed to everything it's in combat with, right? You can't.
It could leave combat as long as it ends in combat. So if you were
well, that's in Cruel Boys, but I think in Ironjaws, you have to stay in combat with whatever you're in combat with.
I've got the rules here, and I will check, but I think that is not correct.
Because if I'm wrong, I want to. Because I was thinking about the Cruel Boys a whole bunch today, right? And I had that in my head as one of the key differences.
It says if it was in combat at the start of the move, it must end.
Okay, so it's the same wording. So it's the same wording.
Yeah, it's exactly the same.
Okay, so it can switch.
It can switch, but it can't move.
It can't leave.
Yeah, well, I mean, it could leave, but the Cruel Boys could literally retreat 12 inches with a vulture and then just walk into the combat because walk into something else. The move phase. Yes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you can retreat and then do it, which is because I guess the Ironjaw's advantage is you get to do it twice as often. Doing it in your opponent's hero phase is really good, but the Cruel Boys having a different version, right, where it's like only in your movement phase, but you can retreat in addition, right?
Right. It lets you go grab an objective that your opponent has no idea. Like, they didn't really think about it. Particularly in those missions that say, pick the primary objective.
Sure.
And your opponent's like, I'm going to pick this one over here, and I think, cool, I can retreat and then and then tag your guy and then pile in and grab the objective.
Yeah, it's a great rule. Big fan.
Yeah, I mean the Ironjaws one, I've ruined, and I've ruined so many people's battle tactics with Mighty Destroyers because they declare their battle tactic. They say something like, "I'm going to grab the flanks with these 2 units," and I go, "I walk into one of those 2 units, and so now you can't run. All you can do is retreat, and you won't be able to get to the side because you were counting on an auto 6-inch run." Yeah,
gotcha.
That actually happened. So the Ironjaws, like. The one where I went 5-0, I know I did that to somebody. And I think 2 weeks earlier I went 3-2 with Ironjaws, and I did it to someone in that tournament too, where, they declare their tactic, and then you go... They say, like, I'm going to fight with 2 units and no one dies, because they don't intend to charge your brutes, and you go, well, 10 brutes just walked into combat with your sorceress. She's not going to have a good day.
Yeah, it's a very strong rule. Ironjaws are in a great place right now. You think you'll keep playing Menagerie, or is that kind of what or you just play something different for a bit, or?
I mean, I'll probably play it for fun. Like I try to get a couple of games. I get at least 1 game in a week, like in person usually. So yeah, I'll probably play it off and on there. It'll be a hard one for me to travel with because it doesn't fly well.
Sure.
Like you can probably see my vultures actually, it's a swamp crawler with wings added from
I saw that.
It's I made I made a son of Behemoth out of Magnus, the 40k guy. And so that's Magnus's wing. So it's got huge, I mean it's the right size base, but it's just hard to fly with it. Same with I flew for a year with Gobsprak for Big Wa, and his staff has been broken like 6 times.
Yeah, those were the good old days.
Yeah,
Gobsprak's moment in the sun.
yeah, I mean, I got a year of like lot of Gobstrack every GT.
Yeah.
And big pigs. I just ran Gobstrack and a bunch of big pigs,
That's
and
awesome.
they did fine. No, I mean, I think my next. I'm trying to remember. I'm playing Son of Behemoth at a 1-day event this weekend, and then I'll probably play Iron Jaws at Wet Coast. And maybe I'll take Menagerie. I kind of did it to prove a point.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, everyone like it's everyone's pretty down on Cruel Boys, and I don't disagree. But I looked at the Menagerie and I was like, but I think these guys can do okay because they've done okay in like the for fun games where I'm playing competitive people. Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat about this army. It's been
no problem.
It's been fun. Always love talking about orcs. Go figure.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll watch. How long does it take you to edit?
I don't.
You don't?
No,
Okay.
I don't edit. I have a rule. No, I don't. I don't have the time. There's no way. I'm way too busy. Like I have never edited a video ever.
Okay. So you don't have to do. Yeah.
Nope. I do nothing. I hit pause sometimes. Nope.
Right.
Like be like often. Like often it'll be like before the conversation's over. You'll get the video. Cool, man.
Okay. Yeah.
But people can find you. People can find you in my Discord too, right?
I am in your Discord.
Yeah, you're just like Will with a bunch of exclamation points, right?
It's a bunch of numbers.
Yeah, right. A bunch of ones.
It's because there was a Will in there, and I was like, well, how about Will 1? And then Discord said this name is taken. So I just kept adding ones, and then I just added a bunch, and that was me. I think I've got my corn, my, well, it's Angron, but I cut off his 40k stuff, so it's a boom thirster as my, icon.
Cool, dude. Well, thanks again for coming out.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll see you, at
Northern Waste.
September, right? Northern Waste, yeah.
Yeah, we had like a little RTT this summer or this winter, just recently. It was like maybe 16 players. It was in February. So
that's good for you guys.
We're trying to get another one going, and I want to name it like in the middle of winter. This one I can't remember. It was called Midwinter Mayhem, I think. But I'm hoping.
Oh yeah, I saw the name.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we can change the name to something that's like don't drive here. Something like that. Stay away from this town. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I did a GT in Edmonton in I think it was October. And it was their first big snow, and I thought that's cool. Like I'm not worried about it, but I would not fly there in February because your flight might get canceled.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, PG, I'd be kind of iffy about. I definitely wouldn't drive from the Vancouver General Metro area to you guys for a 1-day.
Nope.
In the middle of winter.
Oh, no, for sure. That's smart. Only fools come this way in the winter. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Freeze your models off.
Yeah, freeze your models off. Yeah, apparently I'm going to have a grudge match versus, is it Damon?
Yeah, Damon. That's awesome.
Yeah, I listened to his Dudes of Sigmar podcast when he talked about what happened in our game. He was pretty shell-shocked. Like, he was like, wow, I didn't realize you could do that in one turn. Like, I killed all of Vanguard. Bellicor died at the bottom of round 1 because he attacked me. And I had lost some gut rivers. Oh, he killed the Break a Boss. Yeah, so he had like 5 or 6 chosen left, 1 Chaos Knight.
This was Northern Wastes?
No, this was last week. This was my 5th game.
Oh, this was at Cake or Death?
Yeah, and so he's like, if Will comes to Northern Wastes, we're gonna have a grudge match because I need to get revenge for this.
Nice.
I won't bring Menagerie because I'm not gonna fly with him. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, dude. Well, I'm gonna bounce, but super fun. We'll have to do it again sometime. We'll maybe go 5-0 with Menagerie, and we'll send you like an award or something.
Oh yeah.
You king of the swamp orcs.
Yeah, they'll break the internet. People will be like, what?
Yeah.
But I think people should play them. Like, they're really fun. I don't know if I'd take them to GTs if I didn't just also live right next to the place I was going.
Right.
But in terms of games, like, I found they were really fun. And I there's different lists to build, so definitely worth it. Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Wow.
Right. Bye-bye.
Thanks again for Will coming out. Super fun conversation. Like, subscribe. Wow.